Hi everybody, this is Justin Elliott with Elliott's Estate Sales, and today I'm going to tell you another one of my bizarre stories of being an estate liquidator here in Oklahoma for the past 10 years. This particular story actually starts off as a consignment, and if you've been shopping with me long, or if you've been following me long, you know that at one point or another I have had many stores, I've had many retail venues, whether it be in an antique booth, in different antique malls all over Oklahoma City Metro, a store myself, several different booths of different kinds, whether it be a pop-up shop or an estate sale venue. Generally, that's how I'm going to sell. Now, when you do that, I like to source my own items. You'll find thrift haul videos and such on this channel and on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, where I'm going to go into Goodwill or a thrift store or maybe into someone's home or garage sale, and I'm going to buy things, and I'm going to buy them things with the intent of actually reselling them. So I want to buy things low, and then I want to be able to look at comparables, or off the top of my head, I know that I have a specific clientele that I can sell these items for a much larger amount than I've paid. And it's easier to go in and do that in many cases rather than to offer your services for an estate sale, for a liquidation. Your experience is what things are worth, and your sales skills to be able to sell someone else's stuff in their own property. Well, that's one thing, and a lot of people won't qualify for an estate sale because they either just don't have enough stuff, the stuff that they have is not desirable enough, and they don't have enough of it to merit having an estate sale, because there are certain expenses that are required in order to have an estate sale. So the next question that a lot of my sellers will ask me is, do you do a consignment? And I used to do consignments. Some of them were really pleasant experiences, and some of them were actually, worse nightmare situations. They're different in a situation where you want 60 to 90 days possibly to sell a particular item or a particular collection of items. And in a estate sale, you want to sell these items in a 10-hour period with Elliott's Estate Sales over 2 days. Now, there's a lots of advertising that goes into it, but the items do go down that we're marketing at an estate sale. So eventually they will sell if they're desirable. Whereas consignment, you're going to settle on that item, you're going to price it as high as you can get, and then you will come down very, 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 very slow. And, a lot of consignment stores and a lot of consignment places will offer what's called layaway. So you'll pay a deposit on this piece if you can't afford it at this particular time, and if you want to buy it. Say you're in between checks and, maybe you're pretty tight on money and you've got to have this piece, and you're going to pay full retail for it, secondhand at this consignment store, and you got to have it. Well, they'll offer you what's called layaway. So you'll pay down, a portion of money now, and then you'll pay weekly or bi-weekly or monthly, and then you'll redeem your purchase when you pay your last payment. Well, there are lots of places that do that here. That is not a concept that I wanted to absorb. So, the things that I would consign, I would stick them in my store over off Classen by Penn Square Mall, and I would sit on them. And so, I would write a contract for 60 to 90 days to sell these items, and I would really only take items in my store that I knew I could sell. So if you had called me with an upright piano, you had called me with, say, an organ piano, with a very large piece of furniture that wouldn't fit in my 36-inch door at a retail venue. Because at my store, I didn't have a garage door that went up and down that I could fit these big monstrous pieces of furniture in. So a lot of people that are going to, consign something, what they run into is that they live in this big old giant house, and, a traditional house is going to have a 36-inch, maybe a 40-inch, maybe a 42-inch door. One single door to get your stuff in and out of. And the garage door, is large, but the door that's going into the house from the garage door is still 36 inches. And sometimes it'll be 42, sometimes it'll be 40, but that is normally about as wide as the single door will go. Well, these people absorb these pieces of furniture that are, 48 inches in width, and, they're 8 foot wide, and they weigh, 1,000 pounds. Say it's a custom-made, sofa that your, $500,000 house suited well, but now you've downsized to a condo, and the condo is not made to, to have these, big, giant pieces of furniture. Well, someone would want to call me and want to sell this sofa that is huge, and they want me to come pick it up. They want me to get, full reasonable value or retail value for this item in my secondhand store. And they want me to lift, load, carry it, want me to deliver it to someone's house too if necessary. And, I get it there, and maybe the stuff doesn't even fit into the store. So this is kind of what happened with this particular situation, but I don't do consignments anymore, and this is specifically kind of the reason why I don't do consignments. And so I'm gonna go ahead and go in with the story now. So let me get my notes out. Okay, so, typically, most customers are going to call me and they're going to say, look, I have something for you to sell, whether it be their house, their car, their sofas, their whole house full of stuff, or maybe their commercial building, house or commercial building full of stuff that maybe they were operating at one time and they're going to go out of business. Lady calls up, she says, look, I'm here from out of town. I want to say it was like Iowa or Illinois, something like that. And she was here for a very short period of time because she was here closing the probate of the home that she was going to inherit and all the stuff in it. It was her and two sisters, if I remember correctly. And I remember the tallest of the sisters was the one that actually was in charge of everything. And so I meet with the sisters. I went through all their stuff, looked through all their stuff, and we decided that they didn't want to have an on-site estate sale. Primarily, I think because they wanted to get the house on the market ASAP. Literally, the stuff in the house was standing in the way of them listing the house up for sale. And at that time, I was not reassigning contracts, so I couldn't offer them the luxury of being able to sell the house and all the stuff in it maybe as one kit and caboodle, or, being able to sell the house or the stuff in it maybe in two different transactions. What they decided they wanted to do is a full consignment. They wanted everything in their whole house consigned. And I explained to them very politely that, for me to be able to do that, I'm going to need probably about $1,000, $1,500 up front. And the reason why is because I can't absorb the lift, load, and carrying expenses. This house was probably about 3,500 square foot. It had some really nice stuff in it, but most of it was from the early 80s and 90s. And a lot of early 80s and 90s stuff is, at this time, just not very desirable. It would have been really, really high end in early 80s and 90s. And, that one seamless, very style specific, something that could fit into everyone's household. And so if you have those kinds of items, then, it's completely different. But this particular lady had, pretty much style specific. There was lots of crystal and brass type stuff, lots of whites, lots of blues, lots of pinks and turquoises. It was a nice place in the early 80s and 90s. And so the house was a really nice house too in the early 80s and 90s. It did need to be remodeled. The whole house needed to be remodeled and brought up to date. Her folks passed, and so she was here to close the estate. And so we made a contract up. It was a consignment contract. My consignment contract at the time was that I would come and get your stuff. You paid for the expenses to get the stuff to my store, which was on Classen in Northwest Oklahoma City. I think this was on Hefner, somewhere around in there. And, we loaded up. I got all my guys together. I had a box truck at this time. Well, there was so much stuff in this house that I also hired two other people to come and help me with a box truck. And they were professional movers. And so basically dividing everything up, I was going to take everything that was super breakable and super valuable in my particular truck, because I wanted to make sure that we weren't just, hauling butt to wherever we were going to go. And I wanted to make sure that our stuff didn't get broken. They had a lot of crystal, a lot of glassware. They had, some delicate pieces of furniture that would have maybe gotten broken, say like a china cabinet or curio cabinet. And so I wanted to make sure that the customer was not unhappy, first of all, and that we were able to get everything back to my store in one piece. Well, as it started to go, what I'm going to do when I go and do a consignment is very similar to what I'm going to do when I'm going to pick someone's house or pick, a thrift store or what have you. I'm going to get all the items that I know that I can resell. Okay, that I know that someone else will want to buy, whether it be a dealer, whether it be somebody else that wants to pay retail for it. And obviously, that's my number one goal. I want to sell the items to a retail buyer, not a dealer or wholesaler. I love my dealers, love my wholesalers, but, I like to eat too. And so, rather than me getting an item and pricing it and being the middleman, I want to be the end user man. So the guy that's selling something to someone that they're going to cherish in their home for a extended period of time, not someone that's just going to dust it off, clean it up, and put it on a shelf. I mean, that's me. I'm a dealer as well, and that's great. We all need dealers. Dealers drive the industry and drive, in my opinion, the economy in estate sales. But you're always going to have retail buyers, and people that come in, they're not going to buck at a price. They're going to get it. They're going to want it. They're going to leave. They don't care. And so those are, in my opinion, my best customers. Generally the ones that I'm going to get in trouble with, or the ones that I'm going to get in an argument with are going to be someone that's actually negotiating to try to make money off of these items. And so I price very competitively most times, and so this is when I will have problems running into issues at an estate sale. So consignment wise, I don't necessarily have those issues, but I'm not going to load my truck up with a bunch of stuff that I know that's not going to sell. Just like an estate sale, when I'm going through an estate sale, I'm going to see stuff that, it's just undesirable. Maybe it's stained, maybe it's just been overused, and it just needs to be thrown away. It's a good situation sometimes where you'll have a really, really, really worn out piece of furniture in each room in a home. And that worn out piece of furniture lowers the value and lowers the expectation of the shopper because everything else is immaculate. But you've got this one piece of furniture in a dwelling or in a room or an area in the home, or maybe multiple pieces of furniture in an area home that are completely unusable. Like they need to be either trashed or they need to be given maybe to Goodwill so that someone will, want to put fabric on them and redo them and reupholster them and make them new again. And so at an estate sale, it's very similar. I'm selling the idea of you coming into someone's home. Just like when you're going to sell a house, if you've got a bunch of stuff in there that looks horrible, but the house, isn't going to show as good as it could with your stuff in it, then, a lot of times people want to have an estate sale. It's hard for the buyers, unless they're a creative or a designer type person, to imagine what the home could look like if it actually was redone or if the stuff was actually removed from it. So I think we've all been to an estate sale and we've all seen an estate sale, perhaps maybe where it was just like, you look at it and it's like, oh goodness, I'm not sure I would attend that estate sale. And then you see the transformation of someone going in and doing an estate sale, whether it be me or, maybe a company here in Oklahoma or a company around the world that's doing an estate sale. And it's like, oh, wow, okay, this is an amazing estate sale. It's just, it was all stored everywhere. And, then once you start pulling stuff out of cabinets and corners and stuff, it gets crazy. Like you could find a lot of valuable stuff in someone's estate sale. And, that's ideally what an estate liquidator wants. But with a consignment, I'm only taking things that I know I can sell. I'm not going to bring a bunch of stuff to my, limited amount of square footage store that I'm trying to get good value for things and bring your broken, cracked, glued back together, chipped, scratched items back in there. If it's going to be in bad shape, it has to be a specific period. And it has to be a specific kind of piece that people want. Again, estate liquidators, retail venues, consignment stores, etc. Even thrift stores, they want stuff that people will buy. This is not a donatable venue where, just the charity of our heart, we're going to come in and lift, load, and carry everything in your home that you don't want and just put it up for consignment in our consignment store. Because a lot of consignment stores want to uphold a reputable reputation, that they have good, nice stuff so that people will continue to come back. So anyway, all right, let's see what I have here on my notes. Once she started to realize that about 20% of the stuff, maybe 30% of the stuff, was going to be taken on like a third trip. For some reason, she thought that I was going to be able to lift, load, and carry a 3,500 square foot house that was completely filled in one day, packing, boxing, and lift, load, and carrying all these items to another part of the city 30 minutes away in one day. Folks, I can do a lot of stuff on-site on an on-site liquidation in one day. But as far as loading, lifting, carrying, boxing, packaging, itemizing, and bringing it to a store, that process can take weeks. And for you to do it correctly and be able to, account for all the items and be able to know what inventory someone's stuff has actually went into your store, it takes a lot of work. And it's going to sit in the back of the house for a while because it has to be processed into our inventory so that it can be marked, priced, put out onto the floor. So when you do consignment, it's a lot different than when you're going to sell, things that you own yourself. I might buy something, in the mornings and sell it in the evenings. And I know exactly what I paid for it. It might be a 100% cash transaction. So maybe I paid $20 for it and I made $100 for it in the evening. Well, that's pretty easy to account for. You put it in your ledger each day if you've sold something. That's easy. It was my stuff. It was my cash, and I'm the only one responsible for it. But when you start taking consignments and contracts of other people's stuff, there is, unbeknownst expectations. That consignor may want to call that day. Hey, have I sold anything? Do you know what my balance is today? Do you know what I can pay? Can you pay me anything today? Can you write me a check today? And I did this with the store, and I had, 40, 50 consignors, accounts, along with my stuff in my store. And it was a complete nightmare, because unlike an estate sale, you could have 1 or 2 estate sales going maybe at one time. And, you're only obligated to that customer for, a 7 to 10 day period, assuming you didn't reassign their house. Well, with a consignor, you have to keep a customer happy, positive, and a seller's mindset for 30, 60, 90 days. And if their stuff isn't selling, then they start to get a little bit irritable. They start to get a little bit of anxiety. And they want to pick up that phone and call, look, where's my stuff at? Where's my money at? And so, you want the top dollar. You want, us to compete with Facebook, Craigslist, all these other marketplaces. And then, you've got all these antique stores as well. So, I shut all that down. I don't do consignments anymore. But with this particular lady, literally, shit went south, okay, when she decided that I was only going to take 30%. She started loading stuff out herself of the house and told my moving crew, the ones that I was personally paying out of my pocket, because at this time, I don't think I got any money from her up front to be able to do this. I was just going to pay for it all myself. I think I negotiated like 40 or 50% commission, and it was a 90-day consignment. And so now she's decided that she's just going to start unloading stuff, just random stuff. We were unloading it nicely and putting it in boxes and wrapping the furniture up so it didn't get scratched. Condition is everything secondhand. And so if it's not in good shape, it's not going to help me for you to just throw it out the door. Especially when I have to put it in my store. So she just starts becoming irrational and starts throwing stuff out the door. And, all this stuff that her parents have accumulated over the years, it's beautiful to look at. Everybody loves to see it at the holidays. But when it comes time, to liquidate this stuff after maybe you've passed, it's very daunting. It's not only daunting, but it's overwhelming. People have to postpone their lives. They have to move. They have to come back to another state. Maybe they've moved to liquidate all this stuff because they're responsible for it. So she started taking those responsibilities out on me and the people that work for me. She started throwing stuff out the front door. We had come back for the second trip with my box truck that I personally own that was branded with my business. And then I came with 2 other people that I were paying, and their truck they were contractors. They were movers. So if I couldn't get it and I didn't want to mess with it, I would have them move it, okay? So she started telling them to lift, load, and carry stuff that I hadn't even paid for. And at this point, I've come to them and said, look, dude, I don't want this stuff moved. And so they had a whole truckload full of furniture that she told them they could have if they would take it. And so I never heard from them again. I don't think I even paid them because, they didn't do what I asked them to do. And I don't think that they ever billed me. They basically just took all the leftovers from this lady that I didn't want. And so, you've got so many different, sides of a situation where things have went wrong. I called a moving company. I did. Contracted them to pay them with my business. And we're on someone else's property. And she's become irrational. And they aren't listening to me, the person that actually contracted them. They're listening to the lady that owns the home that wants to get rid of all this stuff. And so I got all this stuff moved for nothing. She breached contract, I think, somehow or another. She didn't provide me an address somehow or another. I sold basically almost half of the stuff that I had, consigned. Never heard from her again. I didn't hear from her sister again. It was an amazing situation. I didn't make that much money. I think maybe it was maybe $1,000 or $2. But it's just so interesting to see how irrational people are. I've come to work today, wanting to provide you a service, wanting to, lift, load, and carry and oversee a project for you of lift, load, and carrying your stuff from your home and then setting it up in my store to be resold at a fraction of the cost. I have to pay taxes. I have to pay labor. I have to pay someone to be at the store. I have to pay for the electric in the store. I have to pay for all the bills in the store, leasing, etc., and the advertising of your stuff, your secondhand stuff. And I'm supposed to be able to make money. And you have to deal with people for 60 to 90 days. I passed. I closed the store, I want to say probably about 9 months after I opened it. It was a fun little project, but I kind of considered it as a leash, because when you're doing an estate sale, you're only obligated to a customer for 7 days. Where with the store, you want to be open, 5 out of 7 days. You have to pay someone to sit there for 5 to 7 days. And then on top of that, the customers that come in, they want to haggle. So it's like, I'm literally running a thrift store here, and the only person that's making the money is the person that has consigned something here. Because I doubt they're going to pay taxes on that. They're going to deposit the check and act as though they sold something. So, my thing is, I was getting the blunt end of all of that. And with this lady, she didn't even get her money back, didn't even care. I wish she had said, look, come and get all of my stuff. What will you pay me for it? Because that would have been a little bit easier for me than considering the circumstances of her actually, getting paid 60% of all the stuff that I was loading. If I had bought the whole house full of stuff, and at that time I would have done that, then I would have been able to take all of it, and I would have just dispersed of the stuff that I didn't want at the time that we collected all of it. So, again, communication is everything, and, knowing your customer is everything, and knowing you're a liquidator is everything. So I hope this helps you make a decision in maybe consigning furniture or having an estate sale. If you have not caught my last video that was released a couple days ago, please check it out. This is going to be, I think, number 2 series. I'm not going to officially number them, but this is going to be the number 2 segment of my second season of estate sales, bizarre stories of an estate sale liquidator. So again, my name is Justin Elliott with Elliott's Estate Sales, and I appreciate you watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and if you like this content, please like and subscribe.